Are there really any benefits to walking with Jesus? Is there really any pros? Feeling a lot of cons right now. I'm just being honest and trying to be transparent. I'm trying to do this thing called Christianity. I'm trying to devote myself to God, trying to walk and discipline myself to the prayer closet, serving the community, the house of God. I'm making sacrifices. I'm paying the price. And now I feel like I'm experiencing more cons than pros. Are there really any benefits to walking with Jesus? These are the questions that we're going to be getting into this week. Welcome back to Love Notes. So grateful to be here with you guys. If you have time to say at the end of the video, we got some practical applications that we're going to put together coming out of the book of Isaiah. I love the prophet Isaiah. This is one of my favorite books in all of the 66 love letters, hence the name of this ministry, Love Note. We're getting into the real life questions, the real life issues, the wind and the waves that are promised by Jesus. So without further ado, let me go ahead and begin to read this passage that we're going to be coming out of Isaiah. It's the 32nd chapter. And I stumbled across this just kind of doing my yearly read, attempting to get through the Bible from cover to cover. And I want to encourage us. A lot of times we're getting that read knocked out, or we're strategizing. We're trying to go for a goal of a certain amount of chapters a day. But I want us to always have our ears open and our eyes open to the fact that there's going to be these little chunks. I call them gold trails that God's going to open for us as we're going through these reading plans. And you want to stop and just shut the reading plan off right there. You just want to shut it down right there and dig into it, because the word, Hebrews 4:12, I believe it is, or 4:11, says that it's alive and active. And so we don't want to miss out on the living word. We don't want to miss out on the bread of life, because the bread that gives us life is the bread that's alive, and that is Jesus. In John chapter 6, he said, if you don't eat my flesh and drink my blood, you got no part in me. And eating the flesh of Christ is devouring the word of God, the bread of life. He is the bread, or the manna of heaven, or the manna heaven. It's a little play on words there. And so if you're ready, I'm ready. We're going to be getting into it. Excuse the little noise in the background. We have a rabbit over here in his little cage, her little cage. Sorry. It's her cage, babe, not his cage. But anyways, we're trying to make it happen and make it work. Got some kids in the background too, so you might hear some noise, and that's okay, because we're doing life, and that's what we're doing. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's go ahead and jump off into this. Is the 15th verse, and it says right here, so it's kind of, let me set up the context for us before we dig in. So God's kind of given this contrast between before the second advent and when the second advent takes place, when the outpouring of the Spirit takes place, when we get into the dispensation of grace, which is what you and I are in today. You and I are in the dispensation, or the period of time of grace. And why are we in grace right now? Because Jesus is on the mercy seat. That's why we're in grace right now. That's why we have access to grace, which is the unmerited favor of God. It is the empowerment of God. It's the personality of God. Have you ever heard that they have a grace for the piano, or they've got a grace for the drums, or whatever you fill in the blank? These are literal attributes and characteristics. So the grace of God is much deeper than just unmerited favor. It's a lot deeper than just the power of God or the empowerment. I call it the empowerment to adhere or to cling to the word. Without it, we can't follow God. It's not possible. We cannot do it in our own strength. But grace is much deeper than just power. Grace is our reflection of the personality and attributes of God. To the level that we're walking and denying and dying to self daily, we will reflect the grace or the characteristics and attributes of God. And so that's a beautiful thing as well. So what it's doing is kind of setting up this table for us to dig into this week, where it's kind of saying, hey, look, there's some contrast here when it comes to following God. And we need to understand why it takes place before we can really get into what takes place. And so why it takes place is right here in verse 15. So this is kind of where the shift takes place in the 32nd chapter, where it's going to begin to show us the pros of walking with Jesus. Psalms 103 is a really good one as well. We might look into that a little bit later, maybe next week. But right here in the 15th verse, it says, the word of the Lord reads like this. It says, until the Spirit is poured upon us from on high, and the wilderness becomes a fruitful field, and the fruitful field is counted as a forest. So we're going to get into that, and we're going to be looking at this 15th verse today, maybe just the beginning of it, but I want us to see here, there is a marking of this dispensation or this season of fruitfulness, and what is it? It's because what? Let's look at it again. The Spirit is poured upon us from on high. This is grace, the Spirit of grace and supplication. That's a Zechariah 12:10 reference there. And what I'm trying to show us here is that the origin of this fruitfulness or this grace that we're walking in this dispensation or this period of time of grace is because the Spirit was poured out. We see this in Acts chapter 2 and Joel chapter 2. In the end times, I will pour my Spirit out on all flesh. That's male and female. So we want to see where this thing begins. It begins with the Spirit being poured out. So why do we have fruit right now? Why are we walking in a fruitful season? Why do we even have access to fruit? Because Jesus was poured out on Calvary's cross. His blood was poured out. The Spirit, the veil was open. We're going to get into it in the next talk, but this is some beautiful imagery here. And I need us to understand that the Bible is alive. And if you're lucky enough, you'll have the grace because of the Spirit being poured out for you to be able to allow the Bible to read you. Until next time, be blessed on purpose.